Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and Megan Thee Stallion, a prolific rapper who was shot recently. And I'm going to talk about some placements in her natal chart and some transits that might have contributed to this. Looking at her chart, okay, the first thing, I mean, she's got Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Leo, and she has her ascendant in Taurus. I mean, she's obviously, it's a very intransigent, heavy combination. I mean, Sun in Aquarius, their basic character, the nonconformist, the rebel, and you have, I mean, the Moon in Leo, which, of course, I mean, as far as an emotional needs go, may thrive on entertainment, notoriety, exposure, may give a strong impression of grandeur. I think it's interesting that she has the sun and the moon, or so. I mean, they're in opposition by aspect, but they're also, of course, I mean, they're diametrically opposed as far as the nature goes. The sun in Aquarius is more about doing things more for the collective good, blending in with others, doing things more in group efforts, humanitarian energy, and it's not so much about getting accolades and and really getting recognition. But the Moon in Leo has that need for that, so I find that very interesting. And she in Taurus ascendant, that could, I mean, that's one indicator right there why she's I believe been successful in doing something music related. So anyway, and I'm not sure. I mean, well, I know she was obviously born on a full moon with that aspect. I don't know if it was a lunar eclipse or not because I did not research that. This is kind of an impromptu video, you could say. Now, I don't know what's going on with all these rappers and music artists. They're either getting shot or dying, and thank God she came out of this. I mean, not completely unscathed, but compared to some of the fates of some of the other rappers. But she had got shot in the foot on Sunday. I think she initially stated it was something else, that she cut herself on some glass. And the thing about this is, the one thing that stands out, she at the time she has and she still has transit Mars in Aries in the 12th house. The 12th house corresponds with feet in astrology, and Mars in Aries, I mean, especially being in Aries, can be about some wound through gunfire. So the thing about, and another thing I'm noticing too, is she also has an interesting transit this time. Well, first, transit Uranus is not far from her ascendant right now. So right there, that could be an indicator of something unusual happen, very unexpected, shocking happening to the physical body. And also, transit Uranus has also has actually passed her. I believe it's past her south node. I know it's conjunct. Transit Uranus is conjunct her south node at this time. And when you're talking about the south node involved in transit, and you're talking about a conjunction aspect, it could often be about going away from something. This could be about going away. Maybe this experience might be having her go away from maybe a friendship, maybe with somebody, or certain friends, maybe the ones that might be to her detriment. And I don't know whether this was inadvertent or this was a deliberate shooting. I haven't really looked to see if that is it, which one is the case, and I don't know if there's really much specifics on it right now online at the present time. What information I got was from a TMZ report online. Now, the thing about this too, and also when you have transit Uranus hitting the south node, that could also be going away from something unusual or unorthodox, or just really doing things like that are maybe a little bit, I don't want to say completely bizarre, but things that might be you're kind of living on, maybe on the edge to some degree, doing things that are maybe that might be somewhat, maybe a little bit unorthodox, or being around, maybe being rebel, or maybe non-conforming behavior. She already has the sun in Aquarius as far as her basic character already can emphasize that. But the thing about it is, what's interesting too is that even though they're not square in aspect, the fact she's got the sun in Aquarius and the ascendant in Taurus shows that her outer projection of self, or being the Taurus ascendant, her astrological mask or facade is so strongly different than her sun in Aquarius. Yes, they both have commonality given that they're both fixed signs. The sun in Aquarius, it can actually be very, I call it, immutable in terms of holding on to an idea that others might see really unusual or very non-conforming, or no matter how preposterous it might be in some cases. I'm not saying she does it, but that is an example. While the and also Sun in Aquarius is also about being very progressive, futuristic, more innovative energy and non-conforming, where the Taurus rising is actually really, of course, more conservative as far as what's being projected outwardly. Is Taurus Taurus rising often likes to keep things at the status quo and is really more immovable energy, and Taurus is more steady, more stable, more consistent in what, as far as what she's projecting outwardly, while the sun in Aquarius is more can be a little bit more sporadic or erratic type behavior in some instances. Now, and much more spontaneous, of course, than Taurus rising. So she's obviously, she's projecting a much more stolid and stable, more energy, in contrast to her sun in Aquarius. Now, another thing I noticed too in her chart, she has the Mars in Leo in her natal chart, and it's conjunct her moon in Leo, so it's not surprising she was involved in a situation with gunfire that got some kind of notoriety and recognition, because the moon can be associated with the public, and of course Mars can be about gunfire, things that are of a volatile nature, and given that it's in Leo, something that gets some kind of notoriety and exposure and recognition. Now, another thing, the fact she did have this, I believe by now she's had that surgically removed, that bullet from her foot. She has transit Pluto not far from her natal Neptune in her chart, and that could be an indicator of surgery that is associated with one's foot. And she also appears to have Uranus in her chart conjunct her Neptune as well. So this could be something that was very, you're talking about something that could have been very unpredictable, very shocking and startling. Well, this likely was one of those experiences, unfortunately. Now, the only other thing is really not much more I would say about this as far as her looking at her chart. You're talking about her natal Uranus is conjunct her Neptune. So being a rapper, I'm sure she does certain rhyming in her music. And when you have Uranus conjunct Neptune in the chart, Neptune can be about poetry. Can also, you could connect it with music as well. And Uranus can give, the conjunction to Uranus can give very unusual ability for. There might be a very eclectic style to this as well. And really, the only other thing, there's really not much more I'm going to say about, as far as how this situation, as far as her natal placements and transits may have been related to this gunfire. But again, it's just something that she's very lucky she got out of this relatively unscathed. When you're talking about all the murders and shootings and just the general volatile energy that's really going on right now, sadly, it just to me, she's obviously very fortunate that she didn't, that nothing worse came out of this situation. So anyway, the only other thing I've noticed, she's got the ruler of the 8th house in the 8th house, so sadly that could actually give a greater propensity to death connected with murder, and you're talking about being in Sagittarius. That could be that's obviously an indicator for one that could be on a global scale. So anyway, and also the thing is, it just to me that this is, I mean, we just seem like we're hearing about either deaths of celebrities or shootings connected with them, and it seems like I mean, it's just getting to a point where it's getting very, I guess you could say, very monotonous, to say the least, at this time. She also right now is transit Neptune. I'm seeing in her 11th house at this time, and really, I mean, I'm having that transit actually, and she also has it intercepted in her chart, and which really, to me, though, whether she's projecting this outwardly or not, that shows me that at this time, maybe, perhaps her aspirations and goals may be a little bit somewhat nebulous at this time and unclear, but at the same time, it's also a good transit for doing what she's currently doing as far as being a rapper, because Neptune can be connected with poetry and music, and you're talking about being in the 11th house of goals and aspirations. So really, that, and again, that is pretty much what I wanted, what I wanted to get at as far as transits, natal placements in her chart that could be tied in to what has transpired, and I'm hoping she perfectly has made a good recovery, or is making a good recovery. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.